Hey, it's Bruce Hill, New Skills, New You. Let's talk about solving retention problems using the 4P framework. So when I'm talking about retention, we're actually talking about our employees this time. So remember the 4P framework. Let me slow down. I always do this. Driving revenue, improving retention through personal professional development with an emphasis on sales skills. That's what we do. So the 4P framework is the topic of my next book, Asking Better Questions. And actually, let me put that on here. I love this keyword, by the way. And there's 4 P's to the framework, right? The first P is always people. And it's used in 2 dimensions. Internally, right, as a tool, think of this as part of your people strategy. And then externally, that's towards finding and keeping clients, right? So today we're going to talk about our internal team. We're talking about employee retention. So let me just put that in here. Employee retention. So I had a question. We were reviewing a case earlier today, and they had 36% turnover. Okay, for the year. So that means if they hired 100 people, 36 left. Actually, let me say are no longer employed. Right? Over a 12-month period, this was the ratio. Now, I know there's some leaders, some business owners, maybe some HR folks that see that number and gasp, right? That is incredibly expensive problem to have. So how are we going to solve it, right? Here's what happens. We go very quickly. I think I just did it right now. High turnover. And then they ask, how do we fix it? Okay, that's a pretty logical step. It's pretty logical, but here's a better question, and that's why we call the book Asking Better Questions, or I might rename it Better Questions, Better Clients. I don't know. Get back to me. Let's go down here. Let's ask a different question. Why did they leave? Okay. And maybe you asked this question. We're going to give you a few questions that we asked that may help you as you evaluate how do we improve our employee retention. So this question is, were they terminated or did they leave on their own volition, right? Did they quit? So that's the first question we want to ask. And so who was terminated? Let's start here. Let's start with the terminated folks. Why were they terminated? Why was it necessary to separate and discontinue their employment? I assume you're operating ethically. You didn't just fire them because you didn't like their haircut one day. Now, here's a tougher question to ask. Okay, because take some responsibility. It's not always the employee's fault. Okay, so what do we do to prevent this? Do we have? Let me do this way. We have clear expectations and role description? Question mark. Okay. How does our training support and drive their success? Question mark. How are we measuring their progress and performance? Now, these questions aren't unique to the sales team. They can be applied to anywhere in the business. I just focus on leveraging any customer-facing roles, right? Our business development teams, marketing teams, sales teams, customer success. That's what Bruce focuses on. These can apply to a lot of areas of your business. And this is really comes into people strategy, which is why it's under here, right? That's what we're talking about today. Just go here. There we go. And under HR strategy, because the only business is people. If you take care of the people, they take care of the business. So we had to terminate them, but why do we have to determine is a better question. So before we ask how do we fix it, we got to know why it happened. And maybe you ask these questions, you're ahead of maybe some of these questions you're like, man, that's so obvious, but I needed to hear it. So this is where it starts when we hire. Then how do we support them, their life here as an employee? And now this works both ways. If they're doing poorly, how are we measuring that and documenting that? It's going to protect the business from wrongful termination suits. Hey, listen, this is not employee advice. Please see an employee lawyer for specific advice to your business. But it's going to protect you. But even better is if we can catch it early enough, the training's strong, which is why people bring me in. Hey, we don't have to get here. Now we're working on a higher level of retention. Now, because we're tracking their progress and performance, now we say, hey, they're doing really well. How do we reward that? Now we're talking about promotions, right? Now we're talking about leadership development. That's where we start having more successful quarters and more profitable years. Okay, so let's go here. Let's say they left. Why did they leave? Why did they? Now, if you say we don't know, well, why didn't you know? That's so simple. A lot of people do not do exit surveys. This is invaluable information because it's going to tell you two things. Do we hire the wrong person, or do we hire the right person and then fail them as their company, as their career home? That's two sides. Did we just hire the wrong person? That's valuable to know. Or was there something we could have done differently? Not what they could have done differently, but what have we as the company have done differently so that they would stay, right? Sometimes it's just the right person in the wrong role. Sometimes you hired the wrong person for the role. Sometimes this is what these questions get you to. This is what question you get. Did they leave for money? We need to look at, are we fairly compensating our employees, right? They leave because of a toxic boss. Maybe we need to evaluate our leaders. But if we don't know, if we don't ask them. Sometimes it could be as simple as the commute was just too far. You could lose good people for a lot of reasons, but you won't know unless you ask. That's why the book is called Asking Better Questions. It's really that simple. So what we're doing is, if you have a retention or a turnover problem with employees, we're using these questions. Say, hey, are we hiring the right people? As a promise, are we setting clear expectations? Are we putting training and development in place to help them succeed? Are we compensating them fairly? Those are the 4 P's in action. That's how we impact the bottom line, right? So we're not using expensive software. We're not implementing artificial intelligence. It's not a complicated methodology. We're just asking better questions, and that gets us to better results because this is not sustainable for a business. If you're struggling with turnover in your department, how are you handling it, right? Where are you trying to turn those results around? What's working for you? What's not working? Leave it in the comments. Remember, my name is Bruce Hill. New skills, new you, because one new skill will change your life.